All right, Mads. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. How are you doing and where are you right now?
Well, thank you for having me. So right now, I just got back to Vietnam after conferencing all over the world. So I'm in Vietnam for another week and a bit before I go to the famous Chiang Mai for.
Oh, really? How long are you going to be there for? Oh, sorry.
I'll be in Chiang Mai from September until probably January or so. So
nice.
Yeah, looking forward to go over and hang out with my friends again. So it's going to be fun.
It's exciting. So I have a bit of an interesting story because when I was at Search Birmingham and I was doing that vlog video, I was talking to everybody about what I was doing, how I wanted to interview people. Everybody was telling me that I had to speak to you because everyone was saying that you have like a different perspective on business. And it was great that we got that little chat in for the video, but I'm really stoked to have you on for like an actual proper talk. So I do want to start off with almost like a 3-part question. So the first thing is, if you could tell us a little bit about your background, how that led you to get into SEO. The second thing is, how do you see business different from everyone? Like, what is that angle? I'd love to know about that. And the third thing is, what are you up to today? I know you run a bunch of businesses. So if you just kind of give me that rundown.
Sure. So a little bit about my background. So I used to work in the corporate world, very large companies, so Xerox and IBM and stuff like that. I already at the age of 18, I got super interested in management and leading people and so on. So I've been hooked on that ever since. So I spent about 10, 11, 12 years in the corporate world, managing lots of people, having a fantastically fun time. And unlike most entrepreneurs, I did not become an entrepreneur because I hated my job. I became an entrepreneur despite the fact that I loved my job. So I think that part in itself probably make me stand out slightly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's definitely sort of some background, right? So as today, fundamentally, I own about 7 different businesses, and I like building companies. So I like building teams. I like building companies. And the main reason I see business very different than most is really because I look at it from a business side. A lot of particularly SEOs look at SEO from an SEO standpoint. They don't look at it from a business standpoint. And the fundamental difference for me is any sort of business, when you start a company, it's about figuring out how can you build an actual company. And to me, the definition of a company is an organization that exists and grows, even if you're not part of it or if you're not adding to it. And what that means fundamentally, I mean, I've just been traveling around with my girlfriend for just over 4 months, going around to conferences and checking out a little bit of the whole world. And the fact that I can do that for 4 months without really doing any work is because I have great teams in place. Now, most business owners, particularly most business owners in the world of SEO, would not have a business left to come back to if they were away for 4 months. And that's the difference. So the difference is thinking business versus thinking SEO. And for me, I approach everything from a management standpoint, right? So my focus continuously is about building the right team, hiring the right people, getting the right sort of framework set up and so on. And that's what all my time and focus is with my businesses. So
brilliant. Yeah. And so apart from that perspective that most people don't have, what is everyone in the SEO space doing wrong? How are they running their businesses incorrectly? Or what is that like one thing that you see when people are telling you about their businesses that you think, oh God, I got to fix this?
So how many days do we have for this podcast?
Just over a week.
Excellent. So a couple of key things. Where do we start? Let's start from the top. So let's start with delegation, which is often something SEO struggle with. Yeah. So one of the biggest things is the fact that they delegate tasks instead of delegating ownership and responsibility. So unfortunately, a lot of online gurus sit and tell people, figure out how to do something, then put it into a process and then hand it to someone else. And that's what pretty much all SEOs are doing. Now, here's the thing. If you run a business, you're not sitting designing the process and telling everyone what to do, right? I can promise you, when I worked in IBM, the CEO was not sitting designing and telling 100,000 people what to do and how to do it. That is not how a business operates. And what I mean with that fundamentally is when you're hiring people, you want to hire great people with a good attitude and a good mindset, and you want to teach them how to learn. You want to give them ownership and responsibility, not micromanage them. That is probably the area where I spend the majority of my time, or the largest part of my time when I'm coaching clients is in that space, right? Yeah. So Most of the clients that come to me for management coaching fundamentally are either looking to get out of their business, so they build a company, but they're still such an integrated part of it. They're looking to hire someone to kind of replace themselves so they can actually focus on the business. And those are the sort of two main segments. Or the third one is kind of people just starting out and wanting to get management right from the beginning. And for those three segments, right, like delegation is definitely number one. Now, following up from that, there's a couple of key things. Number one is around recruitment. And really hiring the right people. A lot of the time, SEOs are very good at looking at resumes. They're not necessarily very good at, one, talking to humans, and two, figuring out who the best people are for the relevant roles. And this is a big thing, right? So a big part of my training and a big part of what I do and believe in is I'm utilizing a framework called DISC, which is basically all about human behavior. So when you get good at this stuff, so again, all of my clients have worked through this, right? So when I work with Ahrefs or Matt Diggity or Charles or anyone I work with, they've all been through this training, right? And fundamentally learning to understand individuals is what management is all about. Management is not about just saying, hey, do the things the way I say it. Management is about understanding individual people. And because you understand them as individuals, you then know what buttons to press. You know how to get the most out of them. Yeah. And you know how to put the right people in the right seats. So there's a lot of great people out there who are put in the wrong roles. And the thing is, most of us can be great if we're put in a spot that we're doing something that we're good at. At the same time, all of us can suck pretty wildly if we're put in a job that doesn't match our natural strengths and weaknesses. Right. And understanding people at a good level is really one of the key things behind the ability to build solid teams in that way. Damn. That's a big thing. And fundamentally, I would say 80% of people who come to me say, hey, I don't really like managing. Can I just hire someone to do it for me? Right. And someone like Matt Diggity is a great example. That was his approach 100% when he came to me, right? He was like, hey, I just really want to do SEO. And if you ask him the day to day, he pretty much don't want to touch SEO. He just want to manage people. And the whole thing is, in the beginning, what happens is fundamentally, when you're doing something you know how to do, so you spend years learning SEO and now you know it, so therefore you're comfortable with it. The problem with management is most people haven't learned it, haven't spent much time, if any, on learning it, and therefore they feel uncomfortable with it. But the thing is, as soon as you start learning how to manage well, right? And fundamentally, it doesn't take a long time. I mean, my training course is like 5 hours. Yes, definitely implementation take longer, but you can learn a lot of the basic skills in a relatively short span of time. But the fundamental here is that when you don't know, it's scary. The second you start knowing and understanding, you're like, oh, this is why. Yeah. And the whole thing is when you become capable of making things happening without having to do it yourself. That is what a business is, but fundamentally, that's the level you want to be at. If you're like, hey, I got a great idea, I want to build a website about real estate or hunting or whatever, and you can talk to a couple of your staff members and suddenly a day later, you have a whole bunch of stuff done without you having to do it. That is business. And that is, for me, that is a dream. That's what I love doing, right?
So going back to delegating here really quickly, what should everyone be delegating in the SEO space? I'm thinking content, pretty easy one. Outreach, backlinks, those are both things that are quite easy to delegate. Anything else that you see? And also, how soon should people start to delegate?
So the right answer is everything.
Okay, everything should be delegated.
That's the right answer. Okay. I have 3 things that I look at. So the first thing, and this is what most people get to when they delegate, is delegate things that are easy for someone else to do. Right, so that could be copy pasting some stuff or whatever. That's the simple stuff. The second thing is things that you're not good at, right? Particular SEOs, particularly the very detail-oriented nerdy types, want to know everything. They want to understand everything themselves. And that is probably the biggest point of failure or the biggest point of slowing themselves down, because the problem is you don't want to know everything yourself, right? You don't. You want to hire smart people. And I have a good example. I use a similar example a lot of the time, but I started a podcast a few years ago and I was like, hey, I want to start a podcast. Now, it would not have taken me very long to sit down and figure out how to do any of it, like how to, record it well or how to upload it or where to put it. It would not have taken me very long. But the whole point is that if I started doing it myself, I would be the expert at it and I'll be stuck with it. So I went out, interviewed a bunch of cool people, ended up hiring a girl who, by the way, had never heard about podcasts, didn't know what a podcast was, but she was very smart, she was very bright, and good at figuring stuff out. So I hired her. I gave her some clear goals, which was, we need to publish once a week on Wednesday at, I can't even remember the time, but whatever the time was. Our goal for the first 3 months is to get X amount of listeners, and our goal is to build this as a marketing channel. And that was the objective, right? Mm-hmm. And what I did was, it obviously took her significantly longer to figure all of this stuff out. Like, she had to figure out how to do it. She had to figure out how to literally get the recordings from my Zoom account and everything. Like, I told her, I want to go on a call, I want to press the record button, and that's it. Everything else you have to deal with. So she had to figure out how to get the recordings, how to edit. She had never done editing, how to go through, how to upload them, how to promote them, all of that. But here's the thing. I did nothing. Right. So I ended up starting a podcast, got a bunch of clients out of it, built a ton of great relationships, but I did absolutely nothing besides sitting down and doing what we are doing right here, which is talking to people, which is what I love doing. Amazing. Right. So the ability to do that, and this was not even something that, again, it was something I could have figured out. It was something that, it wasn't difficult to do. But the fact that I didn't have to do it freed me up to do, one, either have a break and do nothing, or two, focus on the business, focus on the most important things in the business. So mission, vision, values of the company, focusing on putting the right people in the right places, focusing on talking to the people I have within the business and helping them become better. I would any day of the week rather spend time getting my staff to do things than doing things myself. Right. And obviously there is, when you're a business owner, there is some exceptions and stuff like mission, vision, values, stuff like, yearly goals and so on. There's stuff where you need to do some work and want to do some work, but the fundamental is, for most of it, you don't. Right. So this sort of doing things that you're not good at doing is great. The third thing, and this is what trips most SEOs up, is whatever takes the most of your time. If I spend 40, 50, 60% of my time doing something, and that could be on-page stuff, that could be link building, that could be anything. That means I can go and hire someone full-time, and they can probably fill their day up with doing what I'm doing, right?
Yep.
Now, there is no bigger hack, because if you find someone, if you hire someone to do what you're doing, and you can free up even 30% of your time, as a business owner, getting 30% of your time back, that is a life hack.
It's massive. It's massive. But one of the things that I've struggled with is, so growing this YouTube channel, I've ended up getting a bunch of leads. And so with those leads, I end up doing the work. And the main thing that has kind of kept me from scaling this business is it's trust. I had a really hard time finding someone that I trusted. I tried a bunch of different people, but at the end of the day, it's like you're giving, I don't know, it's like, not that it's my baby or anything, but it's like, it's my work that represents me. It's my personal brand. It's like, how do you get to that level of trust with someone? I don't know. I guess that's the main thing that has stopped me from scaling, right? And it's trust, but it's also quality, right? How do you make sure that as you scale, as you start delegating things still, they maintain the same quality?
So two key things here. Number one is, based on what you do right now, you could probably find an amazing human being and white label too. So I'm pretty sure by this stage, some good SEOs.
Yeah.
Everything else being equal, I'm sure someone somewhere who you would trust, who is probably better than you at SEO, who is horrible at finding clients, and who could probably help some of the potential clients you have. Now, if you were to white label some of that, you could obviously make either white label it, just let them do it and talk directly to the client and just get a monthly fee from them or a monthly cut from them. Alternatively, deal with the client and get them to do the work, right? That is one option that zero SEOs take. The only people who take that option is the smart people who make a lot of money, which is the salespeople who come into SEO. No, but here's the thing. The salespeople who walk into SEO saying, I know nothing about SEO. I just want to sell. I want to go to a roofing conference. I want to go to a whatever conference, and I just want to sell SEO.
Right.
Who can fulfill it for me? Here's the thing. It is so much harder to sell than it is to fulfill it. Right? I always say, if you first have a pot of gold or a bag of money, you can make things happen. All right. So the selling is the hard part. Right. there's plenty of people you can white label to out there as one option. The second thing is that you're doing it wrong. What I mean with that is the fact that right now, again, I know nothing about what you're doing, what clients are doing. I am making wild assumptions here.
Yeah,
so sometimes it's a local company, sometimes it may be an e-commerce company, sometimes it might be whatever.
Yeah, it's every single type of company under the sun that comes in. Yeah,
exactly. Do you know how to absolutely never scale a business?
Do that.
Yeah. Exactly. That is the number one method where you can ensure that you never scale. And that's great. I mean, if you keep doing that, yes, you can have yourself a relatively well-paid job. But again, if you go sick or you end up in a hospital for 2 months and can't use a computer, that's not a great situation to be in, right? So the way you build businesses is, number one, niching down. And most people is like, oh, well, that means I only work with e-commerce businesses, or like I only work with local companies. And niching down in the simplest effect is fundamentally about niching down in processes. The reason why you struggle to find people you can trust is not because you struggle to find people you can trust. It's because you're having a difficult time with finding people that can actually execute simple processes. You, one, don't have simple processes yet. And that is because you're constantly working with different types of clients. Now, the work you do with an e-com client is so different than the work you do with anything else. And therefore, there's not a simple process to do each of them. Mm-hmm. So the fundamental is you want to niche down into processes. And the right way to do that is to look at single client segments. What you'll see a lot of agencies do is initially they do what you're doing, which is like this, and saying, hey, any clients that need SEO, come this way. What happens with most of the agencies, after about 2 years, they start looking at their client base and say, hey, wait a minute. All the clients we have that are very good are in this particular niche. What about we just do that niche? And then they start doing that niche for another year. And then eventually at year 3, they suddenly have a business, right? Now, you can shortcut that process significantly. If you niche down from day one, if you niche down at a process level, then you can grow and scale significantly faster than most new businesses, right? Now, what does it mean niching down on a process level? So I'll give you an example. I had a very good friend who started working with dentists. And what he did was he built a very good theme, very good looking theme. He tested it right, left, and center, conversion rate, optimized everything. And he really got this theme like perfect, right? He built out all the content briefs for it. He built out everything. And then he said, I have spent so much time perfecting this thing that I can sell this exact thing, the exact same website, the exact same content briefs, etc., to any clients in the country. So he went out and he found clients that was exactly the same, just in different locations. And he said, I have the perfect website, I have the perfect content, I have everything, here's the price. Now, a couple of things happen when you do that. First of all, keyword research, for example, is if you're a dentist in most of, let's say in the US, if you're a dentist in most states, the keywords people search for are the same. The places and the sort of the pages that you want on your website is the same. So fundamentally, if you have, let's say 20 or 30 content briefs that you need on a basic website, and you have everything ready, right? You can literally just replicate the same thing again and again and again and again. Yes, you can, change the theme colors a little bit or whatever, but you can, slap a different logo on it or whatever. But you've already spent the time perfecting it, and therefore you can literally keep selling the same thing again and again. Here's what happens. Your cost of delivery goes down because, the 20th time you're selling exactly the same thing, it's very easy to do. The processes, how to build the site, how to do the content, how to build links if needed, becomes so much easier because you have everything, right? So what happens is your cost of delivery goes down. And the funny thing is what happens is your impact to the client goes up because you know exactly what you're doing, you know exactly their lingo, you know everything. Now, the impact to the customer goes up and your cost goes down. And that means you can charge more money. So instead, of charging a customer $1,000 a month and spending $600 a month delivering it and making 400 profit. What happens is, instead of spending 600 delivering, you suddenly spend $200 a month delivering, and you charge them $3,000 a month. You suddenly make a lot more money.
Yeah, and you become the specialist, right? So people recognize you for X.
Here's the second thing. Yeah. Your marketing game becomes so much easier, right? When you message someone and say, hey, Mr. Dentist, here's 2 case studies of dentists exactly like you that I've just helped triple their business in 6 months. How well do you think that works?
Yeah, sells itself.
Compared to the typical, hey, we do SEO, we're kind of cool, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Come talk with us. Let's sell us some stuff, blah, blah, blah.
Damn. Got to rethink everything now.
Right, but this is the thing. So in the world of SEO, for example, link building companies generally do pretty well. And the reason they do pretty well is because it's one process.
Right.
Hey, we sell guest post initiatives. Here's the process. Here's how we're doing it. Anyone can learn any of those steps. And some of them split it up into 2, some of them split it up into 3. But they have a bunch of people who are doing the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Now you can look at this with various processes. You can niche down and say, my good friend Terry does schema. You can say, hey, our company does schema. That is all we do. All you train your staff in is how to do schema. The problem is, if you're trying to train someone to do SEO the way you think it, that's a 5-year game, right? Or 3-year game, right? Here's the thing. If they leave, you're screwed, right?
Yeah.
If you train one person up to look at 50 existing content briefs, go find some writers and get them to fulfill the content briefs. That takes you a week to train. And if they leave, you hire someone else and they will do it again in a week, right? Your fulfillment becomes so much easier. So it's all about breaking things down to processes. I'm not saying you have to sell local or e-commerce or anything. You can sell any particular processes. There's people out there who just sell citations. There's people out there who just sell website design. There's people out there who sell whatever. But what you want to niche down to is process, right? It's not about saying, I only work with people in this niche. It is, what is the process? Now, here's the thing. My friend that I earlier talked about, he had companies coming to him saying, hey, we are dentists. We currently have this website. Can you help us? And he said, I can only help you if you replace your website with the website that I've built and designed, because I know that is great. If you don't want to do that, that is totally okay, but you're not the right client for me, which means every single system that his staff logged into looked exactly the same. Yep, some of the clients had more blog posts, some of the clients did a bit of stuff, but the backend, the way it looked, the way it functions, was exactly the same with every single client. Now, he got up to over 600 clients. How easy do you think it was for him to maintaining 600 clients?
Decently easy, I guess.
Very.
It's repeatable.
And he was charging them. He was charging them all more than $3,000 a month.
Wow, there you go. God damn.
Right.
Holy hell. So, what are some characteristics of someone who's going to be a great hire for an SEO team? I guess it's a generic question a little bit, but any thoughts?
It depends on the role. An SEO team is a very broad definition. Someone who you want to have to do email outreach is not the same person you want doing on-page optimization in most cases. Yeah. Right.
I'm thinking content and I'm thinking links. What are the 2 characteristics between those 2?
They are very different. So when you're thinking links, you are, in most cases, looking for people who are really good at getting stuff done and are very competitively driven, because links fundamentally is a numbers game. Yeah. It's, if you're sitting doing outreach, it's not if you get every single email 100% correct, or, if you're sending out 10,000 emails, like the goal is volume, the goal is generally quantity, and then it's execution, right? So that type of person is a particular type of dominant person that, generally very competitive, very assertive by nature, have a volume of voice above average, and generally don't smile a hell of a lot.
Volume above, what'd you say about voice, sorry?
Volume above average.
Interesting. Like how they speak.
And generally, yes. And generally don't smile a ton.
Okay. Wow. That's so interesting. And for content?
For content, it's a bit more diverse because content writers, one, you have very different types of content writers. So someone who's a technical writer versus someone who is a creative writer is typically very different, right? So you can find decent content writers with pretty much any type of personality around. And therefore, content can be a little bit of a difficult game. What you need to figure out is what is it you're looking for. So for example, if you're a Core, you're looking for someone who can follow an enormous amount of processes and direction, right? Then you need a certain type of person. If you're someone who needs someone to write copy, that is typically a very different type of person, all right? So it's very difficult to put a particular personality trait on a writer from that standpoint, right?
And what about incentivizing people? Is it all about the money? How do you keep people motivated when a lot of these jobs are just, it's such a grind, right? It's link building. It's just like, how can you send thousands and thousands of emails without burning out, without just saying, you know what, fuck this, I'm done. How do you keep someone incentivized and motivated?
So this is where it comes back to the thing I mentioned earlier, which is you need to understand your people one by one, because people are motivated by different things. They're driven by different things. Some people think it is fantastically funny to sit and do the same thing over and over again every single day, day in, day out. Some people love getting from 0 to 80, right? Some people like okay, let's set it up, let's get it working, let's make it. When it gets to 80%, they're like, yeah, okay, now this is kind of working, it's too boring, right? You have other people who want to take shit from 97% to 100%. The people who are sitting doing the same thing over and over again, perfecting every little tiny detail here and there, that's different people, right? So the fundamental is that you want to understand your people individually because they are motivated differently. So some people are motivated predominantly by money. Some people, most people, don't care. And it sounds strange because reality is when you ask most people, do you want to make more money? They all say yes. But reality is the right question to ask is, what are you willing to do to make more money? Most people are not willing to do very much to make more money.
Right.
And therefore, fundamentally, they're not particularly motivated by money, right? So you need to get to know each individual. Again, like in my management training, I have a 2-3 hour course on understanding people, right? Because this is, for me, one of the core pieces of it. And a lot of that is understanding each person and understanding based on their personality, understanding their core motivation, what pushes them, what drives them, etc. And that is really the most important thing, right? Because when you start understanding your people individually, you can also, for example, incentivize them individually, or you can push them in different ways. Some people you can keep pushing and get better. Some people are more like, hey, I want to get to the level where I'm okay. And then, I just want to show up to work every day and then I want to go home. And, I don't want to get promoted. I don't want to get anything. Pay me my money and I'm a happy camper, right? So,
yeah. And my understanding of it is that in a lot of ways, when you're making a decision of hiring someone, you don't really have that much time with them, right? It's like the actual interview process and the whole recruitment process usually is quite short, right? Maybe you're having 4 or 5 different calls. It depends on the position, obviously. What do you think most people are getting wrong about these stages and about getting to know this person with that limited time frame?
So all from the start of the recruitment process, the number one mistake is that most people don't get enough qualified candidates to apply. So recruitment is like sales. It's a funnel. You want as many qualified people in the top, and then you want to be able to remove from the process so that everything else being equal, you have the best pool of people to pick from, right? Yeah, let me try and do it sort of a relatively high level, right? So fundamentally, when you just start out, you want to, let's say you post a job and you have 200 applicants. I go through a process called everything else being equal. And what I fundamentally look at is simple things. So let's say I'm hiring for a link builder. Now, everything else being equal, if someone is to sit and write outreach mails, send out mails, and sit and negotiate with people, everything else being equal, if their English is fantastic, that's a benefit. So if I have 200 people and I give them an English test and I look at, that could be grammar, whatever, but I give them some kind of English test and I see, I just pick the top 100 that have the best scores. Everything else being equal, if they have a good English level, I am more likely to get a successful hire. Everything else being equal. Then you take the next step. and say, hey, we're doing all this stuff on a computer. Everything else being equal, if someone types a lot faster than someone else, they're more likely to be successful. Okay, well, let's do some typing test. Again, if you look at your total number of people and take the people who type the fastest, have great English, and then you just keep adding to it, right? Now, a lot of this stuff can be done automatically or semi-automatically. I have a very cheap person who can sit and sort all this out, right? But the whole thing is you can look at a lot of qualified people. You can look at what are the things that are most important, and you can then bring that number down. Now, when you're dealing with people who have the, let's say, CV qualification, they're extremely fast on a computer. They talk the language really well. They're interested enough in your job to go through all the hoops of actually applying and going through these tests. Well, everything else being equal, those people are significantly more likely to be successful. So when you had 200 people in the beginning, let's say 2 out of 10 would maybe have made a good fit. When you then boil it down based on the things you might be at a point where you have 6 out of 10. Now, everything else being equal, that gives you a much better opportunity to pick someone great. It does not mean you get them every time. Again, we are fundamentally dealing with humans. Stuff can happen. Even as an extremely good recruiter myself, I make mistakes on occasion. So it's no means 100% safe. You'll never make a mistake. But the fundamental thing is if you get to a point where you're 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 people you hire are fantastic. That sets the world apart. That is the difference between having a freaking successful company and having a company that is doing like most other people are, which is not particularly good. Right.
Interesting. And what do you think are the best places to find these type of people that really can have a high impact on your business? And kind of on top of that, when do you make that decision of, okay, am I hiring someone who's going to be in-house? Am I hiring someone who's external, who's going to be a freelancer? Am I hiring someone who's going to be part-time, a VA, right? How all of those different decisions, I guess the main one is like in-house versus not in-house. That's probably the biggest question there.
So a couple of big things, particularly when you're small, you want to manage as little as possible. Because if you run a small company and you're trying to manage content, you're trying to manage links, you're trying to do everything, that's difficult. So what I generally recommend, what I do myself, if I was to start a SEO company from scratch today, I would probably start out just doing sales. And I would have someone else fulfilling. It could be separate companies. So it could be one company doing, GMBs, or one company doing content, or one company doing links, or whatever. And then over time, as I grew, as I had a lot more revenue, a lot more money, then we could slowly start moving some of that in-house. But one of the simplest things, like people look at link building and they think they're making a killer of a deal by bringing it in-house, right? Like, every time I hire an agency, they charge $150 per link. I can go out and I can buy them for $50 or $60 or $70. I'm going to save so much money. Reality, though, is you need to hire people. You need to set up software. When you ever set up email software, it's a pain in the fucking backside. There's so many things you have to go through. And what most companies don't is they don't understand how to look at the cost of a link. Most SEOs right now, if you ask them, what is your cost per link? They will look at what they're paying per link, but they don't understand to consolidate what am I paying plus staff costs, plus tool costs, plus time. They don't. And realistically, if you go and look at those costs, you're probably paying more doing the links in-house than buying them at an agency. Now, not in every case, but often. Now, here's the second thing. You having to manage link building takes away a lot of your time as a business owner or as a manager or whatever, right? One is the additional cost. The second thing is the additional bandwidth, like the brain power you're spending on it, right? That is also extremely valuable. So fundamentally, in the beginning, it's about looking at how can I fulfill as simple as possible. Because in the beginning, you want to spend your time selling. You want to spend the time getting customers in, right? Because until you have money, you have nothing, right? Right. So that's the initial stage. So now when you start hiring people, and sometimes you want to do this in the beginning, right? But when you start hiring people, the question is then, should you outsource or should you hire them locally? And for me, honestly, 100%, there's no difference. the way I look at it is people is a resource. If someone works for me 40 hours a week, they're 40 hours worth of resource, right? Now, how I hire the person who is that resource, how I manage them is going to make all of the difference, right? So we have an outsourcing company with, 300 some VAs, and
holy hell.
fundamentally, probably 70% of them are not being managed and used particularly well, right?
Really?
So one of the biggest issues is when business owners hire, let's call it cheap labor, they treat it as cheap labor. When you treat cheap labor as cheap labor, guess what you're getting? Cheap labor. All right. Now, we also have VAs in the company who are running businesses. We have a couple of e-commerce VAs that have worked with the business for 4+ years, and they're literally the CEO of the company running the business.
Wow.
Because the way they were managed was they were managed as a resource, they were managed as an individual, as a human, and they were not differentiated between them and someone sitting in an office next to whoever hired them, right? So fundamentally, the biggest difference you can do is if you hire people well, whatever the cost is, well, two things. If you hire the right people and manage them well, your chance of succeeding is extremely high, right? So that's one aspect of it. Second aspect is a lot of people make a huge mental difference between an employee and a contractor. And for me, if someone works for me 40 hours a week, I absolutely do not care what their contractual status or terms or whatever is. If I'm getting 40 hours of resource out of them a week, I treat them like I would treat any other person who is giving me 40 hours, right? Yes. If I don't, I'm not going to get the best out of them. Right. And why on earth would I want someone working for me that I'm not getting the best out of? That makes no sense. And honestly, like I have so many people who always ask me like, but should I bring them in as an employee or a contractor? And like the difference is fundamentally predominantly in your head, right? If you treat them the same, if you give them the same benefits or whatever, there's not a difference, right? Like, yes, one of them can maybe run away faster or whatever, but the whole thing is that if you treat people well, like for our companies, like our attrition rate is like 1-2% or something. Wow. Right? So we have so low attrition because we manage our people well, we challenge them, we give them ownership and responsibility, and they enjoy the things they're doing, right?
Yeah. And so could you help us with a couple of resources so I'm thinking Upwork is I've hired a bunch of people off Upwork. That's probably a good start, right? If you're starting hiring online, what other resources could you suggest?
So what I suggest, for me, Upwork is a great place to hire what I consider contractors, which is people I need for a one-off job. So if I need a graphic designer to design something, if I need a video designer for a project, I think Upwork is great. Do I ever hire full-time people through Upwork? Very, very, very rarely, right? I'll tell you why. Particularly if it's people who have good ratings and so on, you hire them full-time, and what happens? They keep getting bombarded with good Upwork offers. Mm-hmm. And suddenly they are working for you, maybe full-time, and suddenly they have a bunch of other jobs. Suddenly they have clients that are paying them more than you are or whatever, and suddenly they disappear, or suddenly you lose them or whatever, right? So fundamentally, I use Upwork for what in my opinion, what it's supposed to be used for, which is hiring contractors for particular defined jobs like projects and so on, right? That is fundamentally how I see Upwork. So my favorite place to hire right now is in South Africa. I would say unless you are Australian or in Australia and New Zealand, South Africa is by far my absolute favorite hiring destination. So it's in a European time zone, which is great for Europe, and it's a lot better for America than in Asia. The big challenge you often see when you have Filipinos sitting working at 4 a.m. in the morning, you rarely get the best output of people at 4 a.m. in the morning anywhere on the planet, right? So South Africa, I love it for multiple reasons. So number one, native English. Number two, they have a much more Western mindset. So it's very similar, like the South Africans we hire, it's similar to working with Europeans. And again, I have a bunch of amazing staff in like Philippines, Vietnam, and so on, who are great. But on an average scale, it's a lot harder to find a Filipino with a Western mindset than it is to find a South African, right?
Yep.
So South Africa is great for a time zone, great for the Western mindset, great for native English, and generally, because of the Western mindset, they're generally that bit more proactive and so on, right? Which is often what people are lacking when a lot of people, when they say outsourcing, they're thinking of hiring people in Asia, right? But fundamentally, for me, my experience, I've had some great experience in Eastern Europe, but for me, definitely the number one place is South Africa. So,
yeah. Any website that you could recommend to hire people in South Africa, from South Africa?
Yes, we have one ourselves, which is virtualstaffsa.com.
Okay, perfect.
So that's kind of a free platform, so you can go and post your job. Also, if you want help with it, we have aristosourcing.com, which is an outsourcing company where we help hire people. So that's also an option for some people. Other than that, LinkedIn can be pretty good. One of the sentences that I've been relatively famous for saying is that the best people are rarely unemployed.
Yeah.
And it's a very simple concept that, the best people around are not generally sitting around unemployed, or if they do get unemployed by accident, they're rarely unemployed very long.
Mm-hmm.
If you're interviewing someone who have been unemployed for 2.5 years, you're probably not getting the best potential employees.
Interesting. I like that. Okay, last thing, kind of to finish up, I want to talk about your SEO Mastery Summit. I haven't been,
Yes.
but I've heard that it's probably up there in the top 3 best SEO events year round that are available. So what was the reason behind that, and when is the next one? Because I'm going.
Right. So the reason why we started the SEO Mastery Summit, first of all, was actually during COVID, and we started as an online conference simply because all conferences was shut down. And we still wanted to make sure that there was good educational SEO content available for people. So we started up online. We ran it 4 times. And then this year, actually, 2023, we turned it into a physical conference for the first time. So that happened early on this year. And that was a smashing success. We, again, sold out. We had a long wait list. So people were eager to get in, but we had to turn a lot away. This year, we have managed to get an even bigger venue. So hopefully we'll fit in more people, but I'm pretty confident it will still be sold out.
Yeah.
But the concept and the way I look at conferences is that presentations are great and we have a lot of great speakers, but we also make sure that there's a lot of time for networking. Because the biggest time, and this is where SEOs are often not benefiting from being SEOs, is they like sitting nerding in front of their computer, and they're not always great when they come meet other humans. So we really have a lot of long breaks all the time, and we really try and do as much social activity as we can throughout the event to get people mixing, to get people talking with each other and so on. And that's really the number one thing for me. I go to conferences all over the world, and realistically, when I go to a conference, my number one goal is to meet a lot of people in person and have some amazing conversations. And that's what we try and facilitate at the SEO Mastery Summit. And the next one is happening in April next year. So it's kicking off on April 9th to the 11th.
Yeah,
and we will have a lot of people come from a long way away. So we have a couple of pre-event days where we do some workshops and so on. And last year, actually, like a week before the event started, we already had a crew of 20, 30, 40 people showing up. So we were already doing sort of pub crawls and dinners and all sorts of stuff, right? So if you come earlier, if you stay after the event, there's lots of cool things going to be happening. So
yeah. Amazing. Yeah, I'm excited. I'll be there. I might be one of those people that comes before and stays after. So I'll just be there all the time. Yep. Well, Mads, thanks for taking the time and breaking all that down for me. It was really, really cool. Yeah. Thanks for speaking to me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. It was a pleasure.
All right. Take care.